How he caught the ghost. "Yes, the house is a good one," said the agent. "It's in a good neighborhood, and you're getting it for a great price. But I think I should tell you everything about it. You are orphans, you say, with a mother depending on you. That makes it even more important that you know. The truth is, the house is said to be haunted." The agent couldn't help smiling as he said it. He was relieved to see a smile in return on the faces of the two young people in front of him. "Oh, you don't believe in ghosts," he continued. "Neither do I, for that matter. But somehow, the house's reputation keeps me from having tenants for very long. It should rent for twice as much as it does. If we can get rid of the ghost, will you raise the rent?" asked the boy, with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. "Well, no, not this year at least," laughed the agent. And so, the house was rented. The young girl and her tall brother moved in and were thrilled with their new home. It was big and cool, with wide hallways, beautiful staircases, and more space than they needed. But that didn't matter, because they had always lived in cramped houses, and they could never have afforded a place like this if it wasn't haunted. "Thank goodness for the ghost!" cried Margaret happily, running around like a child. "Who wouldn't want a ghost in their house when it brings you a place like this?" "And it's so close to your school," said their mother. "I used to worry so much about the long walk. And David can come home for lunch now. You don't know how much I'll enjoy that." "It seems to me," David explained seriously, "that if I meet the ghost, I will be very polite to him and encourage him to stay. We won't miss the room he takes, will we? I think it would be good to set aside that room above yours, Maggie, for his ghostliness. We don't need it, you know. Besides, the door doesn't shut properly, so he can come and go without breaking the lock." And then they all laughed and had a lot of fun talking about the ghost, which was a big joke to them. They were very tired that night and slept soundly. When they woke up the next morning, they laughed again about the ghost, who was probably shy about meeting new people and hadn't bothered to introduce himself. For the next 3 days, they all worked hard to get their new home in order. Then it was time for school to start, and Margaret had to start teaching. David put an ad in the city newspaper for a maid who could help their mother while they were gone. For a whole day, potential maids came to the door and said, "Is this the house where they want a maid?" "No, ma'am. I ain't going to work in this house. Catch me working in a haunted house." And they all left. Others came in their place, but as soon as they talked to the neighbor's maid, they left too. "Never mind, children," said Mrs. Craig wearily. "I'd rather do the work myself than be bothered this way." So they let the maid go, and the Craigs locked the doors and went to their rooms, exhausted from a stressful day. They had been in the house for 4 days, and there had been no sign or sound of the ghost. The very mention of it was enough to make them all laugh, because they were very practical people, who loved to figure out anything that seemed mysterious and understand it completely before they let it go. David was soon fast asleep, and the house was quiet when Margaret crept softly into his room and put her hand on his arm. It was hard to wake him, and a few minutes passed before he sat up in bed, muttering in surprise. "Hush," said Margaret in a whisper, putting her hand over his lips. "I want you to come into my room and listen to a sound I've been hearing for a while." "Doors creaking," suggested David, as he started to get dressed. "Nothing like that," was all she said. They walked up the stairs and down the hallway to the door of the unused room. The lock was broken, and the door wouldn't stay shut, as I said. They both felt excited, but not scared, as they pushed the door open and stood in the empty room. One of their boxes was in the middle of the room, but that was all they could see. They looked at each other in silence. "Hold the lamp for a minute, Maggie," David said, and then he walked all around the room, looking carefully at the emptiness and even touching the walls. "Secret panels, you know," he said with a smile. But it was a confused smile. "I don't see what it could have been," Margaret said as they went downstairs. "No, I don't either. But I'm going to find out," said David. "That was a chain, and chains don't move around by themselves, you know. A ghost couldn't drag a chain, even if he tried." "The typical ghost usually drags chains," said Margaret as she closed her bedroom door. And then she lay awake all night, listening for the typical ghost dragging a chain. But it seemed the chain must have tired him out, because they didn't hear it again. Their mother had slept through it all, and the next morning they told her about their adventure. "Maybe it was someone in the house," she said, worried. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she knew that burglars were a real possibility. Margaret and David both laughed even harder. "What fun it would be," said David, "for a burglar to try and find something worth stealing in this house." So they all decided to listen for the ghost the next night and try to catch him if they could. But it was Margaret who heard the ghost after all. She was sleeping and woke up suddenly. She heard the sound of a chain dragging overhead. Just as she was about to jump out of bed and call her brother, the chain seemed to disappear from the room above. She lay still and listened. A moment later, she heard it again. It was coming down the stairs. There was no carpet on the stairs, so she could hear the chain dragging from step to step until it reached the bottom. It stopped almost at her door. Something that felt strangely like fear kept her lying still, listening in horror. Then it went down the hallway, dragging close to the door, then further away, then back and forth for a while, and then it started dragging back up the stairs. She could hear it on every step, and by the time it reached the top, she remembered herself and called David. The brother and sister went back to the upper room with the lamp. They searched every nook and cranny of the upstairs, but they came back confused. They hadn't seen anything strange, and they hadn't heard a sound. "I'm going to see that ghost tonight," David said to his sister the next evening. "How?" "I'm going to sit up all night at the top of the stairs. Don't tell Mother about it. It might make her nervous." So, after everyone else had gone to sleep, David slipped into his place at the top of the stairs and settled down for his watch. He put a screen at the top of the stairs to hide him, as if a ghost would care about a screen. And he sat there patiently, waiting. It seemed to him that he had never experienced hours as long as the ones the town clock told off that night. He waited until midnight, thinking that if there were any ghosts around, they would certainly be out then. But they didn't seem to be in the mood to walk around, and the hours passed with nothing happening. He got fidgety, and his body started twitching nervously. Finally, he couldn't stand it anymore and leaned back against the wall, about to fall asleep, when he heard a chain dragging just beyond the open door of the unused room. He couldn't help but shiver. He knew that sound. It was a real chain. More than that, it was coming out of the room and straight towards the stairs. It was dark, and he couldn't see anything, even though he stared into the darkness. Even as he was watching, it passed behind the screen and went down the stairs, clanging on each step. A narrow strip of moonlight from a window fell directly on the stairs. Whatever it was, it had to pass through that patch of light. So David leaned forward and watched. It went down step by step, and soon it slipped through the light and reached the bottom. A little later, it came back up through the light, back up the stairs, and back into the unused room. And then David clapped his hands in delight and ran back to his room and slept soundly for the rest of the night. The next morning, he was very mysterious about his discovery. "Oh, yes, I saw the ghost," he said to Maggie. "There, don't ask too many questions. I'll tell you more about it tomorrow, maybe." That was all the information she could get from him. It was very frustrating. That day, David went into town and bought something. He brought home a big package, which he hid in his own room, and wouldn't even let his sister peek at it. "I'm going to try and catch a ghost tonight," he said. "And you know how it is. If I brag too much beforehand, I'm sure to fail." He was working on something in the hallway after everyone else had gone to bed, but he didn't stay up this time. He went to bed, and Margaret listened at his door, but he was soon asleep. But sometime during the night, they were all woken up by a squealing noise that sent everyone rushing into the hallway. At the top of the stairs, they found the huge rat trap that David had set earlier, and in the middle of the trap was a rat. "Why, David!" exclaimed their mother. "I didn't know there was a rat in the house." And then, suddenly, she saw that a long chain was hanging from a small iron collar around the rat's neck, and she and Margaret cried out together. So that was the ghost! What a funny ghost, they thought when they realized what had happened. This poor rat who had made a nest in a hole in the broken chimney. He had probably been someone's pet once, and now he had broken up their household, disturbed their sleep, and created all this excitement. It made them laugh to think that this innocent creature had caused all this trouble. "I'll get a cage for him and take care of him for the rest of his life," said David. "We owe him so much that we can't be ungrateful." The next morning, he took the ghost in a cage and showed it to the agent, telling him all about catching him. "So, you have a good house for about half price. All thanks to that rat," exclaimed the agent grimly. "Young man, but never mind, you deserve it. What are you working for now? $6 a week? If you ever want to change jobs, come back to see me. I think you need a job that will give you a chance to grow." And the agent and David shook hands warmly over the cage of the ghost. The end. If you liked the story, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there anything that surprised you? Who's your favorite character in the story? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.